Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Football Podcast. It is me, Joey P, Joe P. Zapia, and it's Wednesday. You know what that means. It's time for the ranks. Let's do it. It's time to look at Week 17, the discrepancies in the ranks, what you need to know, who you need in your lineup, who you might want to think twice about, and to help me break it all down, of course, every single week is Pat Fitzmaurice, the Fantasy Shillelagh. He's back again, better than ever, a little holiday break, so Pat is refreshed, and we brought in the big guns. Billy Muzio, my paisano, one of the best rankers in the universe, who's back again to help us. You can follow him over at FF Muzio. He works at Full-Time Fantasy. Billy, it's so great to have you here on the show. We're going to hit all these positions here. They're going to talk about the running backs first. Before we get in, I want to press the gas because someone asked me this question, and I think it bears at least a conversation. I'm not saying a reaction, just a conversation. Someone said they're a little worried about starting Josh Jacobs this week against the 49ers. Josh Jacobs is coming off arguably his worst week. Derek Carr and the Raiders certainly not looking good. The 49ers, we saw what they did to Kent Walker just a few weeks ago. I understand people's trepidation. Josh Jacobs isn't spectacular. What do you do with Josh Jacobs if you're in the championship this week? Do you panic? Do you worry? Just leave it and not look at it? What do you do?
I think there's a slight bit of panic. I mean, the Niners are the number one defense versus the running back position. They're one of four teams not to give a passing touchdown to the position as well. They're only giving up 3.3 yards per carry to the running backs. The only thing that maybe a bit of hesitation is it's hard to move Jacobs down in rankings just because of the amount of volume he's seeing. You know, at the beginning of the year, I thought, McDaniel's offense, we're going to see something similar to we saw in New England.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to see, a bunch of running backs in this backfield, and I couldn't have been more wrong in my preseason evaluation. And here we are. We have a workhorse running back with, getting 27, 30 carries a game. That type of volume is hard to ignore. And even if you're going up against a stout defense like the Niners, there's always a chance that there is, a break inside that line. And he's able to, get off some chunk yardage. It's not likely against these Niners, but you getting the ball 27, 30 times a game, it definitely opens up the gate to opportunity. And so I'm going to say maybe lower your expectations this week versus the Niners, but he's as good of a bet as anyone to score a touchdown on any given week. And it's hard to lower him too far down your rankings based on volume.
Well, that's the trick, right? I mean, you're not going to start, like if you had a really good running back room, would you start Jerick McKinnon or Cam Akers or any of those guys over him?
It gets tough. I mean, McKinnon has been on fire. He's the number 2 running back since week 13. He's been pretty magnificent. Seen about 55-60% of snaps on a week-to-week basis now. Although it has been more in the passing game than the running game. So that's a tough one. I probably still lean Jacobs, and I mean he's the horse that got you to the race, right? You might as well just lean on him at this point. And he's going to see 80+% snaps and get the majority of the carries, and that's a little bit more trustworthy in terms of reliance on fantasy points.
Right, but we're not going to get cute, right, Pat? We're not going to go starting, some other guys a little lower on the trough just because they have good matchups. You got to play Josh Jacobs. Pat, let's get to your guys here. Let's start with the guys Pat likes more than Billy. Let's start with David Montgomery, who you've got at RB14 this week. Billy's got him at RB20. ECR kind of in between you at RB18. So let's talk about him. Great matchup here against the Detroit Lions. We all know that. This is certainly an opportunity where we thought the Lions' D against the run was going to be good, and guess what? Last week, all-time bad. Oh, my God, it was terrible. Who saw that coming after they really tightened up the screws? So what do you see this week in Week 17 for David Montgomery and this Bears offense, Pat?
Yeah, I wonder if the Lions' run defense just completely broke in Week 16 because they had actually held 3 straight opponents under 100 rushing yards. And for the last month, they'd been really good, starting with, I think, shutting down Saquon Barkley in Week 11. But right before Week 11, they gave up 258 rushing yards to the Chicago Bears in Week 10. And here come the Bears again on the heels of the Panthers just completely destroying the Lions' run defense. So I guess I'm not scared of the defensive matchup anymore and, kind of encouraged by it. In fact, granted, it was mostly Justin Fields running all over the Bears all over the Lions in Week 10 with 147 rushing yards. But Montgomery's averaged 75.7 scrimmage yards per game this week. And if you throw out a game where he got hurt and left after 11 snaps, he's averaging 80.7 scrimmage yards. So there's a nice safe floor here. We maybe worry about Khalil Herbert cutting into his load a little bit. But last week, Montgomery outsnapped Herbert 42-26, outtouched him 20-8. And, this game has a Vegas total of 52 points. So we're expected to see offensive fireworks. It's the highest total on the board for the week. And I want to be invested in this game.
All right, Billy, back to you. Pat brings up the point about Khalil Herbert. Is that what's kind of keeping Montgomery just a little suppressed in your rankings, or the fact that, at this point, too, this could be a game where Justin Fields is just running amok inside that controlled temperature kind of spot?
Yeah, if Chicago is smart, they just shut down Fields, honestly. There's nothing to play for this week, and they're only going to hurt their draft position if they continue to play him, if they do, just happen to win. My hesitation is definitely with Khalil Herbert being back. His first game back, he saw 41% of the snaps. I wasn't expecting that last week from his week 1 return from being out on IR. What does that snap count look like in week 2? I mean, prior to that IR stint, Herbert was seeing around 40% of snaps on a week-to-week basis, and he's seeing anywhere to up to 60% of the rush share, depending upon the week and the hot hand approach. And people forget, Khalil Herbert was the 7th leading league rusher prior to leaving to IR. So he was definitely getting it done on the ground and was the hotter of the two hands on a week-to-week basis. I think last week's anomaly, or it was an anomaly, I should say, with Detroit. I mean, prior to that, they were the 12th stingiest defense versus the running back position. There's only 1 of 4 teams that have not allowed a receiving touchdown to running backs as well, which is, I mentioned earlier, San Francisco. The other 2 are Jacksonville, Dallas, and of course Detroit here. If you subtract out just half of those rushing yards last week, and I know we're speaking hypotheticals at this point, but it was a pretty big gashing. And if you just remove half of those yards, they're still a top 10 defense versus the run. So I think that was just a failure across the board on Detroit's run game. I think they get it back together here against Chicago. Those rushing stats, Pat hit the hammer on the nail. They're inflated because of Fields. When you look at Chicago, if you subtract out Fields' rushing yards, they're actually bottom 12 in the league from a running back standpoint. They're like top 3 in the league with Fields' number in there because Fields is over 1,000 rushing yards. So I have hesitation with Herbert. I have hesitation with Detroit just because they have been good up till last week. I think it was an anomaly, and I think I'm just going to slightly move David Montgomery down a little bit.
Next guy on the list here is Isiah Pacheco. Pat, you've got him at RB22. Billy's got him at 26. That's where ECR is as well. Let's talk about Pacheco for a moment here. Pat, last week, 14 carries for 58 yards, 2 targets, ended up with 10 half PPR points. They got Denver this week. I think it's always a tough spot. Whenever a coach gets fired, I always say it, you get that weird rallying cry where everybody kind of gets together for at least 1 week and looks respectable again. It's an in-division matchup. What are your thoughts on Pacheco in week 17 and his usage that he might see?
They're really going to have to rally because we saw them get steamrolled by Cam Akers last week. 118 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns. So, I do expect to see them play a little bit better. But over his last 7 games, Pacheco's averaging 15.6 carries and 76.9 rushing yards. Like, he's been the engine of the Chiefs' running game. And, Jerick McKinnon is the guy with his name in neon lights because he's on this crazy touchdown binge of late. Yep. And we've seen Pacheco kind of get left out of the touchdown barrage for these Kansas City backs. Like early in the year was Clyde Edwards-Helaire was propping up his fantasy value with 6 touchdowns in I think 5 games or something like that early on. And now it's McKinnon scoring all the touchdowns. Like, why can't it be Pacheco one of these times? He's only got 3 this season, but give him enough carries against a run defense that's maybe starting to wane a little bit late in the season. It's possible. And if nothing else, he's got that floor because of the usage in a game where the Chiefs are favored by 2 touchdowns and presumably will have a very run-friendly game script. And in a game where their implied point total, I think, is like 29.25 points or something. Like, they're going to be yards and points for the Chiefs. I like the overall outlook for Pacheco in a game that sets up this way.
Billy, how do you see the outlook for Pacheco? Because McKinnon has been the touchdown guy, and Pacheco's kind of just been the steady Eddie in terms of yardage, but really the upside hasn't been there. So how confident are you in starting him?
Yeah, RB 22, 26. I think we're splitting hairs at this point. It's a flip a coin range and leave it up to variance. But I look at this game script, I believe I agree with Pat. It's definitely favorable to Isiah Pacheco this week, and McKinnon has dominated snaps, but it's been primarily in the passing game, and so this game script doesn't necessarily favor the passing game, but still, nonetheless, snaps are snaps, and we did see Pacheco with that costly fumble, which earned him some time on the bench, and so you have to look at how much of these coaches still trusting Pacheco. There's some question marks, but overall usage has continued. So when you look at snaps, so I like to always compare the two, and McKinnon has been very hot. He's had just touchdown streak for the last 4 games, 5 touchdowns in 4 weeks, and we look at the exact rush share. So rush share, Pacheco has seen more. 56% he saw week 13, 56% week 14, 45% in week 15, 63% in week 16. But it's just been all in the passing game that he's been just succeeding all that work to McKinnon. So McKinnon saw 19.5% target share in week 15. He saw 21% in week 14, 11% last week. That was primarily game script dependent. But I still think that they're both heavily involved. I think that McKinnon's probably the more trusted back when they get into the red zone, as we've seen in his recent scoring, spree, as well as the fumble that we saw from Pacheco. I think it's kind of in the back of the head when they get into the red zone. So I think 22, 26, I think we're in the right range. We'll have to see what happens on the ground and if they're able to score. But they have given up the 13th fewest rushing touchdowns on the year. So it's kind of back and forth in my head right now.
Understandably so. Chuba Hubbard, next guy on the list that Pat has higher than you. RB 35, you've got him at 39. ECR is at 41. Now, Chuba had a huge game last week, 12 for 125, ended up with 13 half PPR points. He's only got 2 touchdowns on the season, so touchdown equity is not necessarily his strong suit. This week he gets the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and all of a sudden the Carolina Panthers, dare I say, are relevant. I know it's tough to chase the previous week here, but if you're in a deeper league here, Pat, and you're looking for RB, what do you think about Chuba's chances of giving you anything close to what he gave you last week in week 17?
Well, you said it, Joe, deeper league. Like, I'm not starting Chuba Hubbard over Travis Etienne or Miles Sanders or someone like that. But in a deeper league, like, I think he is flex worthy. And I think actually both of the Panthers running backs are flex worthy because of this massive sea change they have had with their offense since the exodus of Matt Rule and since they inserted Sam Darnold at quarterback. They have run the ball in the 4 games with Darnold at quarterback 63.2% of their offensive snaps. Like, they are insanely run heavy. They're kind of like the Eagles were late last season, where the Eagles basically just abandoned the pass. And they have had 43 or more rushing attempts in 3 of their last 4 games. 43 or more in 3 of 4. Like, that's crazy. So Hubbard is averaging 11.2 half-point PPR points over those 4 games. And, that's with only 1 touchdown. So, like, there's a pretty good yardage floor here. Basically splitting snaps evenly with Foreman now, with a little Raheem Blackshear mixed in. And Hubbard's had double-digit carries in 3 of those 4 games. So a little bit of a value add with his pass catching. So, yeah, granted, the Buccaneers are not an easy matchup for them this week. But the Buccaneers' run defense is not this skull and crossbones matchup anymore. Like, they've been good against the run, but not great. And the Buccaneers might not have Vita Vea in this game, like their primary run stuffer. He missed last week with a calf injury. So if he's out again, I don't see the matchup as being a real deterrent here to possibly playing Hubbard in a flex spot.
Billy, what are your thoughts on Hubbard this week?
Yeah, I think Tampa's still tough enough. You look at, they're still the 5th stingiest defense versus the running back position. They've given up the 5th fewest rushing touchdowns to the position on the year. And Pat hit the hammer on the nail. Chuba's been more involved in the passing game, but they've actually given up the fewest yards per reception to the running back position all year.
I gotta stop you because it's the second time you said it. You hit the hammer with the nail. Is this a Billy Muzio special?
Hit the hammer on the nail.
Hit the hammer on the nail. Yeah, I like
on the nail.
Yeah, on the nail.
Hit the hammer on the nail. Okay, all right. Yeah, I because I heard it the first time, and I'm thinking to myself, maybe he just misspoke there. It's like my friend down in West Virginia say that fella needs a fresh coat of paint. Like that was his old expression he used to use.
Yeah, it's essentially it's saying like he's on spot. Like he's
Gotcha. Let's see, I'm still learning things. Even though I'm old now, I'm still learning
things. It beats my MO, which is to hit the hammer on the thumb. So
also damaging. All right, back to Chuba Hubbard.
That was me at tight end position all year, is hitting the hammer on the thumb. So it's you could definitely swing and miss.
Fantastic.
But back to Chuba Hubbard and against this matchup versus Tampa, they've given up the second fewest receiving yards to the running back position as well all year, 342 yards. Eighth fewest receptions to running back, so only 60 on the year. So they have to have some concern with the passing game because this game script is not going to favor their run game. I don't think they're going to be able to get out here and run the ball 20, 30 times against Tampa, although they may try in the beginning, but I do think that this game script will favor the passing game more, and that's actually where Tampa's actually strongest versus the running back. Nonetheless, you can't ignore the snaps. Pat again, got the numbers correct. They're seeing more 50-50, but we did see week 15 63 to 30% snaps in favor of Chuba. Last week was 45-44, so they're definitely seeing a little bit more balance when they are able to run the ball. I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball this week. I do think they're going to lean a little bit more on Chuba, but I just don't think it's going to be enough to get him into the top 35.
All right, before we switch around here and look at the guys that Billy likes more than Pat, I want to remind everybody My Playbook cheat sheets are available for free, fantasypros.com/myplaybook. So don't forget, you can go out, you can get those bad boys. You can download the My Playbook app. It's still free. We're in championship week. It's never too late to get the best tools in the business, and Fantasy Pros has them. You get all your rankings there from customizable experts, whatever experts you want. You get them all in one cheat sheet. It'll help you go set your lineups for all of your championships that are still out there. Again, it's the My Playbook cheat sheets tool over at fantasypros.com/myplaybook. Billy, before we get to your guys, this breaking news just happened. I want to press you again because Derek Carr is not playing anymore. It looks like Jarrett Stidham is going to get a look here for the next 2 weeks. Would you like to recant anything that you said previously about Josh Jacobs now?
That means they're going to run more. I mean, so now we're going to see probably.
But if he's trying to get a look at the youth, does that mean Zamir White gets a look or some other, what's going to happen here?
It's possible. I mean, we're going to want to see, what the beat writers are saying it's happening the next couple days in camp. It's not looking good for my Devontae Adams shares here in the final week of the fantasy matchup. If
Devontae Adams after last week, it has not gotten better, boys.
Yeah, and girls. Although it can't get much worse than it was last week either. I'm
a Patriots fan. I've seen Jarrett Stidham. Careful what you wish for. All right, let's get to your guys. Miles Sanders, RB16 for you, RB20 for Pat, RB16 for ECR. So you are the consensus man when it comes to Miles Sanders. Again, last couple of weeks, not been great for Miles Sanders. I was shocked. I took a big L last week on Miles Sanders. I thought he'd be heavily involved. I know game script kind of got away from him, but he's got 7 points in 2 weeks combined. It's not a good look. They got New Orleans this week. What's your thoughts on Miles Sanders?
Yeah, I'm hoping if we just combine all those points, we might get finally to RB15. But we're looking at the matchup. The matchup's not great. For New Orleans, they give it the 14th fewest points to the running back position of the year, 12th fewest yards per carry at 4.5, 17th most, though, to receiving touchdowns allowed at 3, second stingiest in receptions to the running back position. So I know I'm making the case against my guy here, but I do think that this is going to be a heavily favored game script for Philly. Eagles are 7-point favorites against New Orleans. I should think we should see a little bit more of the run game. Sanders saw 53.5% of snaps last week with Minshew at helm, 54.8% in week 15, 66% week 14 when he finished as the running back 1. Sirianni's comments have suggested that he wants to get Sanders the ball more. I think that usage should probably increase this week. Philly needs to lock up the win in order to secure the 1 seed in the NFC and secure the bye. So I think we see a little bit more Miles Sanders this week, although this ranking is, just as a side note, kind of an asterisk, because if Hurts is in, I think that he's going to get down marked just a little bit in my rankings because we have to be concerned with Jalen Hurts' rushing ability in the red zone. But if he's out, I like Minshew. With Minshew, I like him a little bit more.
All right, Pat, your thoughts on Miles Sanders this week? You're a little bit below, and look, let's be honest, Miles Sanders kind of earned that ranking.
Yeah, so I've got him in mid-range running back 2 territory. So, it's not like I hate his outlook for this week, but I think I'm kind of on the opposite end of Billy here. I'm ranking him as if Gardner Minshew is going to be their quarterback this week, and I think I might actually bump him up a little bit if Jalen Hurts plays. Like, and I know what Billy is saying, like Miles Sanders got poached at the goal line a lot in Chicago a couple of weeks ago. There was one time where he kind of stumbled a little bit on a chance to have a 1-yard touchdown run. Rear end hit down like a foot short of the goal line. And of course, Jalen Hurts plows it in the very next play. So yeah, maybe it does cut into his touchdown outlook a little bit. But I also think some of Sanders' success has to do with Jalen Hurts freezing those linebackers a little bit extra longer. The defenses have to honor his rushing ability. And maybe that's why we've seen Sanders average 3.3 yards per carry the last couple of weeks. Well, I mean, 2 weeks ago, I guess we were getting Hurts still. But last week against the Cowboys, 21 carries, 65 yards. So I'm a little worried about how that went down with Sanders last week, and that he, the efficiency kind of bottomed out. He doesn't really add anything as a pass catcher. I mean, generally, I think he is going to be an auto start for most people who have him this week. But then again, we're in championship week, so we probably have some teams with pretty loaded backfields playing this week, and maybe Sanders is kind of a pivot guy for those people.
Next guy on the list, somebody who might work a little bit more this week. Now, we know the Tennessee Titans are kind of in a precarious situation. They're looking ahead to the game they have against the Jaguars for that division that's coming up here. But Hassan Haskins is a player that's getting a lot of buzz. Now, Billy, you've got him ranked all the way at 35 this week. So in deeper leagues, this is a guy that's on your radar. ECR's at 56. Pat hasn't even looked at him yet. Like, it's a low ranking. So I guess the question is this. I'm not bringing up Haskins to really talk too much about Haskins and how much we can really play him. It's more about your thoughts on Derrick Henry, because that is kind of the buzz guy this week. And the Haskins ranking, to me, where you have him, was very indicative of what your thoughts are with Derrick Henry, which is troubling, I think is the best word to use that potentially, because even if they have the intentions of, we're going to go in there with Derrick Henry, there is that universe where maybe Tennessee falls behind, maybe they take him out, and maybe all of a sudden, in game, the fluidity of that situation could really hurt people's fantasy championship aspirations.
Yeah, I want to start off by saying a little asterisk next to Haskins this week. Mm-hmm. Plain and simple, this ranking is purely speculation that Derrick Henry does not play on Thursday Night Football, and this is a volume play. This game is meaningless. It really is. It's very rare which you see a Week 17 matchup not matter to the division. It's going to come down to Week 18 when it's do or die versus the Jags. So it's in the Titans' best interest to rest Derrick Henry this week and get him back next week when they need him the most in order to, get into the playoffs. Because if he plays this week, gets re-injured or whatever may happen, they risk their chances at playoffs. So in my opinion, the Tennessee Titans would be smart to rest him this week and to let Haskins and this offense kind of just do its thing. And it doesn't matter if they win or lose, because it's going to come down to next week. And Dallas is not a easy opponent against the running back position. The top three versus the running back all year. They've only allowed 277 fantasy points. They're 17th in the league in yards per carry, number 1 in touchdowns allowed at 6, first in receiving touchdowns, tied with the other 3 that I've mentioned earlier. Plain and simple, it comes down to volume, and running back 35 is roughly 6.5 fantasy points. It's not asking a lot of Haskins. That's a couple catches, a couple receiving yards and 20, 30 rushing yards. I think that's really doable in the grand scheme of things. But again, it's very dependent on if Derrick Henry is active or inactive.
Pat, your thoughts on Derrick Henry in this short week here, and as Billy put it, not really playing for anything. So is it worth putting Henry out there in your championship week?
Billy raises a good point about, this being sort of an irrelevant game for the Titans. So I doubt we're going to see Henry get the 25 carry game we're used to. I mean, they did show a clip of him. I saw some video on Twitter of him running yesterday in practice on Tuesday with like a trainer had elastic band around his waist. He looked fine, basically, but still there is a disincentive to work him hard. What I wonder, if he is ruled out or held out of this game, is it going to be Haskins mostly taking this load, or is it going to be some mixture of Haskins and Julius Chestnut, the undrafted rookie free agent? So that's why like I'm not going to have, even if Henry is scratched, I'm not going to have Haskins in my top 15. I think at best he would be like a lower end running back 2.
Okay. Last on the list here, Latavius Murray. Billy's got him at RB 34. Murray at 39 in your ranks. Pat, ECR is actually even higher than Billy on Latavius Murray right now at 32. So, Billy, let's talk about this. Your thoughts on Latavius Murray in this backfield. Is he a guy that you think you can run out there as a flex RB?
I wouldn't like it. I put him here just because he keeps landing in this around this area in terms of rankings, and it doesn't look good. It's not like I'm gonna plant my flag on here and try to defend. It just breaks down to his volume. I mean, he's seeing 40% of the rush share on a week-to-week basis. He saw 8.8% target share last week versus Edmonds 5.9. Kansas City, this game is heavily in favor of Kansas City. I think that they're going to have to lean on the passing game a little bit more. Kansas City gives up the 13th most fantasy points to the running back position as well, 8th most reception touchdowns to running backs, 17th most yards per reception to the running back, 4th most receiving yards running back. So I think that we're going to see a little bit more usage in the passing game with Latavius Murray this week. Again, I'm not crazy about it. Running back 34, 35 range is again that kind of meh range in my opinion, but it's still someone that we're going to rank. So I'm not going to plant my flag, but it's something that I think he's still going to be volume dependent.
All right, he is playing Kansas City. So your thoughts here on this one, Pat?
I just want nothing to do with this sickly Denver offense. And, they've got an implied point total of around 15 this week against the Chiefs. And look, I realize the Broncos were getting blown out by the Rams on Christmas Day, so you have to take the snap counts with a grain of salt. But Murray 31 snaps, Chase Edmonds 28, Marlon Mack 10. What if the Broncos decide they want to give Chase Edmonds a longer look these last couple of weeks? Because he's actually under contract for next year, but it's kind of a hefty contract. I think it's like $6 million for a running back, at least. That's a lot. And they could walk away from it with zero dead cap money. So it's going to be an interesting decision for them. And maybe they take these last 2 weeks to, get another look at Edmonds and, give him some of the snaps that Murray's been getting.
Fair enough. All right, let's get to the rankings throwdown where I pick up a player and highlight him because I'm higher on him than the ECR. And then Pat usually tells me I'm wrong. Although last couple weeks, it's been a little bit more in my favor. Cam Akers, I've got it 17. ECR's at 21. I'm not trying to be prisoner of the moment and live in last week, although I'd like to if I had Cam Akers. But it seems to me that Akers might not be getting enough love here potentially. So, Pat, what are your thoughts on Cam Akers? My ranking versus ECR, am I right? Or is ECR correct?
Joe, we're all the way to week 17. Have we had an instance all season where I have been higher than you on one of these guys?
Never. No, because you're much
got
better
one
at this
here,
than me.
Joe. Let's get one of those
here
in.
Against the Chargers. Let's go.
Running back 16 for me.
Look at that.
Workhorse usage, check. Good matchup against the Swiss cheese run defense, check. The Chargers are terrible against the run. I mean, this ranking is not just about chasing last week's points, even though, he certainly put up a lot of points last week against the Broncos. But yeah, I mean, I like the outlook for him a lot, and it seems like they are now fully committed to him, and Kyron Williams is just a change of pace guy.
Fantastic. I love where we ended up. What a journey it's been. An unexpected journey between Pat and myself. I just moved into 16 while you were talking, just so we can hold hands here together on this ranking. All right, last one here, listener mailbag. Obviously, it is free to join our Discord, fantasypros.com/chat. But again, you get access to stages, AMAs, and a whole lot more. Here's one from Sean. Do we trust Aaron Jones in week 17? My other options are Pacheco, Khalil Herbert, Zach Moss. It's a full PPR. Billy, let's start with you on this one. You want to play Aaron Jones or any of these other guys, Pacheco, Herbert, or Moss?
Oh, the matchup's good. You got to like the matchup versus Minnesota, but the usage has been a little concerning. Though we may not have any Christian Watson in practice today, which is at least going to give them a little bit more opportunity on the ground with Aaron Jones and in the passing game. So I like Aaron Jones. I don't love the matchup. You're not fully trusting his usage right now, but if you're still in the championship match, you have to plug him in your roster. You can't sit him.
There you have it. All right, everybody, don't forget, go over to fantasypros.com/myplaybook. Use the MyPlaybook cheat sheets. Billy, thank you for joining us as always. Follow him on the Twitter machine at FF Muzio. That'll do it for us, but the story of the game goes on. For Billy and Pat, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.